I'm recording this from a stone terrace in the hills of Tuscany, where the afternoon sun turns the vineyards below into ribbons of gold and green, and the only person who expects anything from me is Giovanni, the farmer next door, who sometimes brings me fresh tomatoes. The air smells like rosemary and wild thyme. A church bell rings in the distance, marking 4 o'clock like it has for 300 years. But let me tell you how I got here, because that story starts on Father's Day in Boston, when my son looked me in the eye across my own dining room table and said, "Dad, you're 67 years old living in a museum. Mom's been dead 3 years. This house is wasted on you." His wife nodded like he'd just read the weather forecast. That's when I understood I'd spent 43 years and over $300,000 raising a son who saw me not as a father, but as an asset waiting to be liquidated. So I did something they never expected. I sold the house they thought they'd inherit, put the money where they couldn't touch it, and bought a one-way ticket to Italy. What I left for them in my lawyer's office destroyed every plan they'd made for my money. But I should start at the beginning, because the beginning explains everything. The dining room smelled like pot roast and garlic mashed potatoes. June 16th in Boston, and I'd been cooking since 10 that morning. Pot roast the way my late wife Margaret used to make it, slow in the Dutch oven with carrots and onions and red wine. Fresh bread from the bakery on Newbury Street, the one Margaret loved. I'd even set the table with the wedding china we'd gotten 45 years ago, the Lenox pattern with the platinum trim. My son Jake arrived at noon with his wife Rebecca and their daughter Sophia. My granddaughter, 11 years old, still young enough to hug me tight when she saw me, still innocent enough to believe that family meant something more than transactions. "Grandpa Rob," she said, bouncing on her toes, "did you make the chocolate cake?" "The very same one, sweetheart. 3 layers with ganache frosting, just like Grandma used to make." Sophia grinned and ran toward the kitchen. Jake and Rebecca followed more slowly, and I caught the look they exchanged. The look I'd been seeing more often over the past year. The kind of look that meant they'd been discussing me when I wasn't around. We ate in what should have been comfortable conversation. Sophia chattered about her upcoming summer at lacrosse camp, about the new puppy her friend had gotten, about wanting to visit the aquarium again. I listened, laughed, asked questions about her favorite exhibits. This was what mattered. This was why I hadn't said anything about the strange phone calls from Rebecca asking about my investments, the way Jake had started asking questions about the property value of the house. "Sarah." Jake's voice cut through the conversation. "Why don't you go watch TV in the den for a bit? The adults need to talk." Sophia looked between us, confusion crossing her face. "But I want to stay with Grandpa." "We'll call you when it's time for cake," Rebecca said firmly. It wasn't a suggestion. My granddaughter left, glancing back at me with worried eyes. I tried to smile reassuringly. I'm not sure I managed it. When the door closed, Jake set down his fork. "Dad, we need to have a serious conversation about your situation." "My situation," I repeated carefully. "You're 67, Jake said. "You've been alone in this house for 3 years since Mom died. It's a 5-bedroom Victorian in Beacon Hill. The property taxes alone are what, $40,000 a year? I can afford the property taxes." "That's not the point," Rebecca interjected. She had that lawyer voice she used, the one she'd perfected during 15 years at Morrison and Whitfield before she quit to focus on Jake's commercial real estate ventures. "The point is efficiency. You're maintaining a 4,000 square foot house by yourself. You leave lights on all day. Last month you forgot you had the stove on and burned a pot. You locked yourself out twice." "Dad, those are signs." "Signs of what?" "Signs that you need more support than you're getting," Jake said. "We've been researching, and there are some excellent senior living communities in the area. Not nursing homes," he added quickly, seeing my face. "Independent living, condos, basically. You'd have your own space, but there'd be people around, activities, medical support on site. You wouldn't have to worry about this place." I looked at my son, 41 years old, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost $200, sitting in the house where I'd raised him, telling me I needed to leave it. "I don't want to leave my home." "Dad," Jake leaned forward, "you're living in a museum. Every room is exactly how Mom left it. Her reading glasses are still on the nightstand. Her slippers are still by the bed. You haven't changed anything in 3 years. It's not healthy. This is my home, I said quietly. It's full of memories of your mother, of raising you, of 40 years of our life together. It's also worth $2.1 million, Rebecca said. The words hung in the air like smoke. There it was. The real conversation under all the concern about my well-being. 2.1 million, she repeated. In the current market, possibly more. That's a significant asset sitting here depreciating while you pay massive overhead. If you sold, moved into a condo, you'd free up almost $2 million. You could give Jake his inheritance now, while you're alive to see it benefit the family. The family, I repeated. Jake, Rebecca said. Me, Sophia, we're family too. And frankly, we're in a position where that money would make a real difference. What position is that? Jake shifted in his seat. The commercial real estate market has been tough. I've got 3 properties that aren't performing. The loans are coming due and the bank is getting aggressive. We're not in trouble, Rebecca added quickly. We're just over-leveraged. It happens in business. If we had access to capital, we could refinance, hold the properties until the market turns, come out ahead. But without capital, we might have to sell at a loss. How much of a loss? Jake didn't answer. Rebecca did. We're looking at potentially losing $700,000 if we're forced to sell now. And the bank has indicated they might foreclose if we can't make the next payment. Which is when? Next month. They sat there looking at me, my son and his wife, asking me to sell my home to cover his bad business decisions. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to sell the house your mother and I bought in 1978, the house where we raised you, the house where she died in our bedroom 3 years ago, so you can cover loans on properties that are losing money. We want you to help your family, Jake said, the way family helps each other. I have been helping, I said, and I kept my voice level. I gave you $50,000 for your wedding. I gave you $40,000 for the down payment on your first condo. When Rebecca's mother got sick, I lent you $30,000 for her medical bills. I paid for Sophia's private school tuition last year, when you said money was tight. That was $25,000. I've been paying for her music lessons, her summer camps, her equipment. That's been running about $15,000 a year for the past 3 years. Should I keep going? Those were gifts, Rebecca said. We never asked you to keep track. I wasn't keeping track to hold it over you, I said. I'm keeping track because I want you to understand that I have been helping. For years. Over $340,000 in the past decade alone. That's not enough, Jake said. His voice had an edge now. 300,000 spread over 10 years isn't enough? Dad, Rebecca's voice was sharp. You're not working anymore. You don't have hobbies. You just sit in this big empty house all day. It's honestly depressing to visit. Every room is like a shrine to Mom. You need to move on, and we need your help. This is moving on for both of us. The word depressing hit like a physical blow. My existence was depressing to my own son. And there's something else you should know, Rebecca continued. I've been consulting with an elder law attorney. There are legal mechanisms available when adult children become concerned about a parent's ability to manage their affairs. If you're showing signs of cognitive decline, leaving the stove on, locking yourself out, living in the past, we can petition for conservatorship. We don't want to do that, Jake added quickly. But if you're not capable of making sound decisions about your welfare, we might not have a choice. You'd have me declared incompetent? I would do what I have to do to protect you, Jake said. And to protect our family. We need that money, Dad. If you won't sell willingly, we'll have to explore other options. For everyone's sake, he stood up. Think about it. We'll give you 2 weeks. Then we need your decision. Rebecca gathered her purse. They called for Sophia, who came running back, still smiling, still innocent. Ready for cake, Grandpa? She asked. I looked at her bright face and felt something break inside my chest. Not today, sweetheart, I said. Grandpa's not feeling well. Her face fell. I watched them leave. Jake's BMW pulled away from the curb, Sophia waving from the back seat. I stood in my front hall, surrounded by 40 years of memories, and understood that my son saw all of it. Saw me, as nothing more than an inconvenience to be solved with legal documents and forced sales. Margaret's photo watched from the mantel, taken at our 40th anniversary 2 months before the diagnosis. Her smile frozen in a time when our son still loved us as people, instead of as a balance sheet. "What do I do, Maggie?" I whispered. The house was silent. I spent the next week barely sleeping, couldn't eat, kept replaying Jake's words, Rebecca's threat, the coldness in their eyes. This was my son, the baby I'd paced the floor with when he had colic, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd helped with college applications, the young man I'd walked into his first job interview building for moral support. When had he become this stranger who threatened to take away my independence? On the 8th day, I started making calls. First, my lawyer. Morrison and Paulson had handled my affairs for 20 years. David Paulson himself took my call. "Rob, good to hear from you. What can I help with?" I explained the situation. The Father's Day conversation. The demands. The threat of conservatorship. David was quiet for a long moment. "Rob, I'm sorry. This is unfortunately more common than people think. Adult children pressuring aging parents for early inheritance. The conservatorship threat is particularly ugly. Can they actually do it? In theory, yes. But in practice, it's difficult. They'd need medical evaluations from multiple doctors showing significant cognitive impairment. Burning one pot and locking yourself out occasionally doesn't remotely qualify. You'd have to be unable to manage basic daily activities. You're nowhere near that threshold. So they're bluffing? Mostly. But they can make the process miserable. File petitions, force you into evaluations, drag it through probate court for months. Even if they lose, which they would, it would be expensive and exhausting. What are my options? David paused. What do you want to do? I thought about Margaret, about the plans we'd made for retirement that cancer had stolen, the trips we'd postponed, the dreams we'd put on hold while raising Jake and managing life. The house that had become less a home and more a mausoleum, where every room reminded me of what I'd lost. I want to sell. On my terms, not theirs. David was quiet. "Walk me through what you're thinking," I told him. It took 30 minutes. When I finished, David was silent for a long moment. "Rob, are you absolutely certain about this?" "I've never been more certain of anything since Margaret died." "Then let's make it happen." The next 8 weeks moved quickly. David connected me with a real estate agent named Patricia Chen, someone discreet who understood complicated family situations. We listed the house quietly. No yard sign, no open houses, targeted marketing to high-net-worth buyers looking in Beacon Hill. The offers started coming within days. The market was hot. The house was in a historic district and impeccably maintained. Margaret and I had taken care of every detail. The winning bid came in late July, $2.3 million, all cash, quick closing, higher than Rebecca's estimate because the buyer was a tech executive relocating from San Francisco who wanted exactly this kind of historic property and didn't want to negotiate. I accepted. While the sale processed, I researched. Spent hours online learning about Italy, Tuscany specifically. The hill towns, the vineyards, the slower pace of life. Margaret and I had honeymooned in Florence 45 years ago, spent a week in a tiny hotel in Fiesole overlooking the city. We'd promised ourselves we'd go back someday. I was going back now, just not together. I found a place in a village called Montecchio, population 800, an hour south of Florence. A restored stone cottage on a small vineyard property, owned by a widow named Elena who rented it to foreigners. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, terrace overlooking the valley. €800 a month. I emailed her. Her response came in charmingly imperfect English. She said she would be honored to have an American guest. That she understood grief, having lost her own husband 5 years ago. That Montecchio was a place where people could heal. I booked a one-way flight, September 8th, Boston to Rome, train to Florence, bus to Montecchio. I booked it under my maiden name, Mitchell Hughes, a hyphenated version I'd never used but was legally entitled to. Made myself harder to find. The house sale closed on September 1st. $2.3 million minus fees, taxes, and the remaining mortgage left me with just over $1.9 million Combined with my pension, my retirement accounts, and savings, I was looking at about 2.4 million in total assets. Enough to live comfortably anywhere in the world for the rest of my life. I packed 4 suitcases, clothes for warm weather, my laptop, important documents, Margaret's wedding ring on a chain, photos of her, of Sophia, a few of Jake from when he was young. Before. Before what? I wasn't sure. Before he learned that money mattered more than people. The day before my flight, I drove to David's office, brought an envelope. Inside was a letter I'd spent 2 weeks writing and rewriting. Jake and Rebecca. By the time you read this, the house at 127 Beacon Street will have been sold. The new owners took possession on September 1st. I received $2.3 million for a property you expected to inherit for free. I want you to understand exactly what you've lost. Over the past 15 years, I have given you the following. Wedding costs, $50,000. First home down payment, $40,000. Loan for Rebecca's mother's medical expenses, never repaid, $30,000. Multiple emergency loans for business ventures, never repaid, $65,000. Sophia's private school tuition, $25,000. Sophia's activities, camps, equipment, and extras, $45,000. Vehicle purchase when your car died, $35,000. Various gifts, holidays, vacations I paid for, $50,000. Total, $340,000 in direct financial support. This doesn't include countless dinners, help with moving, free childcare for Sophia, or the emotional support I provided during your mother's illness and death. In return, you told me I was living in a museum. You said visiting me was depressing. You threatened to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of my assets. You gave me 2 weeks to decide whether to give up my home or face legal action. You were right about one thing. I was living in a museum. But not because I couldn't move on from your mother's death. Because I was living with the preserved memory of a son who used to love me. A son who existed before you learned to measure your father's worth in dollars. That son is dead. The man who threatened me on Father's Day is a stranger. I'm leaving the country. I won't tell you where. Don't try to find me. The $700,000 you're facing in losses from your commercial real estate investments is your problem to solve. So is whatever the bank decides to do about foreclosure. I am not your retirement fund. I am not your emergency account. I am not your problem to manage. To Sophia, Grandpa loves you more than you'll ever know. I'm sorry I won't be there to watch you grow up. But I hope someday when you're older, you'll understand that sometimes loving yourself means disappointing people who have forgotten how to love you back. To Jake, I held you the day you were born. I taught you to ride a bike and helped with your homework and paid for your college and stood beside you at your wedding. I loved you through every stage of your life, but I will not sacrifice my dignity and my final years to fund your mistakes. You'll have to find your own way forward. Don't contact me. I won't respond. Your father, Robert Mitchell. I sealed it, gave it to David with instructions to hold for 30 days, then mail it registered delivery requiring signature. I wanted them to wait, to wonder, to call my house and get no answer, to drive by and see new curtains in the windows, to feel the uncertainty I'd felt when they'd cornered me on Father's Day. Then I checked into an airport hotel and spent my last night in America watching the sunset over Boston Harbor, feeling nothing but relief. The flight left at 10:30 the next morning. I was at the gate by 8, coffee in hand, watching planes take off. My phone rang at 8:45. Jake. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Rebecca. Voicemail. A text came through. Dad, we drove by the house. There's a sold sign and someone else's car in the driveway. What's going on? Call us immediately. I powered off the phone. Now boarding flight AZ618 to Rome, the announcement came in Italian accented English. I stood, grabbed my carry-on, joined the line of passengers, going somewhere they were wanted. The flight attendant scanned my boarding pass. Window seat, Mr. Mitchell. Have a wonderful flight. I intend to. Rome arrived 9 hours later. I cleared customs in a daze, took the Leonardo Express to Termini Station, sat in a cafe, drinking espresso that tasted like actual coffee, Instead of the watery American version I'd been drinking for 67 years. The Florence train took 90 minutes through countryside that looked exactly like the Tuscan paintings Margaret used to love. Rolling hills covered in vineyards and olive groves, medieval towers on distant hilltops, cypress trees standing like sentinels. Elena met me at the Montecchio bus stop, a small woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that had seen their share of grief. "Benvenuto," she said. "Welcome to Montecchio, Robert. You will love it here. Life is slower. Nobody asks questions. You just breathe." The cottage was perfect. Small, but bright. Stone walls 2 feet thick, keeping it cool. Kitchen with a gas stove and a window overlooking vineyards. Bedroom with an iron bed and crisp white linens. Bathroom with a shower that took some figuring out. And the terrace. God, the terrace. It wrapped around 2 sides of the cottage, shaded by a pergola covered in grapevines. Looked out over the valley where the village of Montecchio clung to its hillside, terracotta roofs glowing in the late afternoon sun. I stood there that first evening, watching the light change from gold to rose to purple to black. Watched lights appear in distant farmhouses. Heard church bells ring the hour. No one called. No one texted. No one wanted anything from me. I was free. The first month was adjustment. Learning where to buy groceries at the small alimentari in the village square. Figuring out the butcher's hours and the baker's schedule. My Italian was terrible. But Elena was patient, and the villagers seemed charmed by the elderly American who tried so hard to say buongiorno correctly. I met an expat group that gathered at a cafe called Il Gallo Rosso, the Red Rooster. Met William and Patricia from Atlanta, both 72, retired doctors who'd moved to Tuscany 6 years ago. Met Hans from Munich, 69, former engineer now learning to paint watercolors. Met Colette from Montreal, 65, who'd left Canada after her husband died and never looked back. They became my community. We met twice a week for coffee or wine, shared stories of the lives we'd left and the lives we were building. None of them pried into why I'd come alone at 67. They understood that some stories needed time. I started walking every morning through the vineyards, past farmers pruning vines and tractors hauling grapes during harvest season. My body changed, lost 20 pounds. Slept through the night for the first time in years. The constant acid reflux I'd had in Boston disappeared. Elena introduced me to her neighbor Paolo, who owned a larger vineyard operation. He needed help during harvest season, just carrying bins and sorting grapes. "I'm 67, I told him. "Can you lift 20 pounds? I can lift 20 pounds? Then you can work." It wasn't about the money, which was minimal. It was about having purpose again, about being part of something, about standing in a vineyard at sunrise with 10 other people picking grapes and speaking broken Italian and laughing when someone made a joke I only half understood. I started taking Italian lessons from a young woman named Chiara who was studying to be a translator. Twice a week in her family's kitchen, conjugating verbs and learning vocabulary and practicing conversations. "You're doing very well," she told me after 6 weeks. "Most people your age give up. Most people my age haven't been told they're living in a museum." She looked at me with curiosity but didn't press. 3 months in, I turned on my American phone for the first time since landing. It took 15 minutes to load all the messages. 89 missed calls. 63 texts. 27 voicemails. I didn't read any of them. Just logged into my email to check for anything from David or my accountant. Found a note from David saying Jake and Rebecca had received the letter, that Rebecca had called threatening lawsuits, that David had explained there was nothing to sue over. A note from my accountant confirming my pension was being deposited correctly. An email from Jake, subject line, "How could you do this?" I hovered over the delete button, almost clicked it, scrolled down instead, stopped at an address I didn't recognize, but the sender name made my chest tighten. Sophia Mitchell. My granddaughter. Subject line, "Please, Grandpa." I stared at it for a full minute before opening. "Dear Grandpa Rob, Mom gave me your email. She doesn't know I'm writing. She's been crying a lot since you left. Dad moved out last month. They're getting divorced. We might lose our house. Mom says we might have to move to a smaller place. I have to leave my school. I don't understand everything that happened. Mom said you abandoned us. Dad said you were being selfish. But I found your letter. The one you left with your lawyer. Mom threw it in the recycling, but I took it out and read it. I'm 11, and I know I'm not supposed to understand adult things, but I'm not stupid. I heard Mom and Dad talking about your house before, about needing your money. I didn't like how they talked about you, like you were just, I don't know, like an ATM or something. I'm sorry they were mean to you, Grandpa. I miss you so much. I miss Sunday dinners and you teaching me to cook and watching old movies together. Are you really in Italy? Mom found charges on the credit card before you canceled it. Is it beautiful there? Do they have good food? I have a school email now for doing projects. Could we maybe write to each other sometimes? I know Mom and Dad hurt you, but I didn't hurt you. I still love you, even if they don't act like they do. I do. Please write back. Love, Sophia. I read it 17 times. Then I cried for the first time since Margaret's funeral. Not from sadness, exactly. From the realization that something I thought I'd lost forever wasn't completely gone. My granddaughter still loved me. Despite everything her parents had told her, despite being caught in the middle of their mess, she still loved me. I wrote back that night, carefully, knowing Jake or Rebecca might read it eventually. Dear Sophia, thank you for your letter. It means more than you can possibly understand. Yes, I'm in Italy, in a small village in Tuscany. It's beautiful here, warm and sunny. The food is incredible, fresh pasta and bread, and tomatoes that actually taste like tomatoes. I think you'd love it. I'm sorry about what's happening with your mom and dad. Divorce is hard for everyone, especially for kids. None of it is your fault. I want you to be very clear about that. Grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes hurt people who had nothing to do with them. I would love to write to you, but I need you to understand something first. My relationship with your parents is complicated right now. They hurt me badly, and I need time before I can talk to them again. You and I can have our own relationship, just grandpa and granddaughter. But if they try to use our letters to send messages to me or to find out where I am exactly, I'll have to stop writing for a while. That would make me very sad, but I need to protect myself. Is that fair? Write to me whenever you want. Tell me about school and lacrosse and what you're reading. I love you, Sophia. I always have, and I always will. Grandpa Rob. Her reply came the next morning. That's fair. I won't tell them details. Mom knows I'm writing, but she said it's okay. She said she's glad I still have you even if she doesn't. We can make it just ours. We started writing twice a week. She told me about her new school, smaller, but she was making friends. About lacrosse tryouts and getting on the team. About a boy named Marcus who was in her English class. About the new apartment, just her and her mom now, cramped but okay. She sent pictures sometimes. Her, in her lacrosse uniform. A sunset from their apartment window. A drawing she'd made in art class of a house that looked suspiciously like my old place on Beacon Street. I told her about Montecchio, about learning Italian and working the grape harvest. About Paolo's dog Bruno, who followed me everywhere during work. About Elena teaching me to make real Italian sauce, nothing like the jarred stuff from American grocery stores. Sent her pictures of the terrace, the vineyard views, the village square. 4 months became 5, then 6. My Italian improved from terrible to merely bad. I started writing a blog about expat life in small-town Italy, about starting over, about refusing to let other people define your worth in your final decades. Small audience, but growing. People finding it who needed permission to leave situations that were killing them slowly. Met Elena's daughter, Francesca, during a Sunday lunch, who was incredibly warm and welcoming. Through her, I met more locals. Got invited to a neighbor's olive harvest. Started being included in village events. The Feast of San Martino, the Christmas market, the New Year's Eve bonfire, and Elena. We'd been friendly from the start, landlady and tenant. But slowly, it became something more. Conversations on the terrace that lasted hours, cooking dinner together in her larger kitchen, walking through vineyards at sunset. She'd lost her husband Luca to a heart attack 5 years ago. Understood grief, understood starting over, Understood that companionship didn't require grand gestures or dramatic declarations. Just showing up, being present, caring. One evening in January, nearly 5 months after I'd arrived, we were sitting on my terrace, wrapped in blankets against the winter chill, drinking Vinsanto and watching stars. "You're different from most expats," she said in her accented English. "They come here to escape. You came here to find. Find what? Yourself. Your value. Your reason." I told her everything then. About Jake and Rebecca. About the Father's Day ultimatum. About the letter. About Sophia. She listened without interrupting, her hand warm in mine. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "In Italy, we have a saying. Meglio soli che male accompagnati. Better alone than in bad company. Your son chose to be bad company. You chose to be alone. Now you are not alone anymore." I looked at her, this woman I'd known for 5 months, who somehow understood everything. "No," I said. "I'm not." 7 months in, David emailed with news. Jake and Rebecca's divorce was finalized. Jake had declared bankruptcy. They'd lost the house after all. Rebecca was living in a rental apartment in Medford, working at a mid-sized law firm for a fraction of what she'd made before quitting. Jake was living with his brother in New Hampshire. Sophia was with Rebecca. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just the distant recognition that consequences had arrived exactly as they always do. 8 months. Sophia's emails continued regularly. She told me Rebecca was different now, quieter, working a lot but nicer when she was home. They were okay in the apartment, smaller than the house, but actually kind of cozy. "Mom talks about you sometimes," Sophia wrote. "What does she say? That she misses you, that she made mistakes, that she wishes she could tell you she's sorry, that she understands if you never forgive them, but she's glad I still have you. Does she know we write? Yeah. She cried when I told her, but she said it was good. She said I should hold on to you because she couldn't." 9 months in, an email from Rebecca. I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. Subject line, "I'm sorry, Rob. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you'll read this. But I need to say some things even if they disappear into the void. I was wrong about everything. Jake was in worse financial trouble than I knew when we cornered you on Father's Day. He'd made investments without telling me. Taken loans I didn't know about. When I found out how bad it was, I panicked. Instead of being honest with you, instead of asking for advice or help in a respectful way, I let that panic turn into cruelty. You weren't living in a museum. You were grieving the loss of your wife of 40 years. You deserved love and support, not demands and threats. I'm ashamed of what we did, what I did. I'm an attorney. I knew the conservatorship threat was baseless. I used my legal knowledge to intimidate you. That's unforgivable. Jake and I are divorced now. The business failed. We lost everything we'd tried to force you to save. But the worst thing I lost was my relationship with you. Sophia shows me pictures sometimes of Italy. You look happy, happier than I've seen you look since Margaret died. I'm glad you found that, even though I was part of what you had to escape from. I'm in therapy, working through things, learning about how desperation can make you cruel, how fear can make you do things you never thought you were capable of. I don't expect anything from you. Not a response, not forgiveness, not a relationship. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm deeply, truly sorry. If you ever want to communicate, I'm here. If you don't, I understand completely. Thank you for still writing to Sophia. It means everything to her. And it means something to me, too, knowing you haven't completely given up on all of us. Rebecca. I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and walked down to the village square, sat at Il Gallo Rosso with an espresso, watched people go about their evening routines, the baker closing up shop, the priest walking to evening mass, children playing football in the square. Forgiveness isn't instant. It's not a switch you flip in your mind. It's a slow process, sometimes incomplete, often painful. But maybe, possibly, it could start. I didn't reply that day, or that week, but I didn't delete it either. 10 months in, finally I wrote back, "Rebecca, I read your email. I needed time to think about it before responding. Here's what I know. I'm not ready to have a relationship with you or with Jake. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you both did, the threats you made, the way you looked at me in my own home on Father's Day, those things don't disappear because you're sorry now. Trust takes decades to build and moments to destroy. But I don't want to never have a relationship with you. You're Sophia's mother. You were part of my family for 15 years. I held Sophia when she was born. I remember you crying happy tears. That person is still somewhere in there. Here's what I'm offering. We can email, slowly. You can tell me about your life, your therapy, your growth. I'll tell you about Italy, about starting over, about building something new. Maybe after enough time and enough emails, we can try a phone call. Maybe after even more time, I'll visit Boston briefly. But no promises, no timeline, just possibility. That's the best I can offer right now. Also, I want you to know something. I didn't sell the house to punish you. I sold it because it stopped being my home when Margaret died, and it became impossible when my own son threatened me in it. I needed to leave it behind to move forward. The money is mine. I won't apologize for keeping it, but I've set up an educational trust for Sophia, managed by David Paulson. When she turns 18, it will pay for her college, any college she chooses, full tuition and expenses. When she turns 25, she'll receive $150,000 to start her adult life. That's her grandfather's gift. Not because I owe it to anyone, but because I want to give it. Take care of yourself, Rebecca. Take care of our granddaughter. And maybe, eventually, we'll find some version of a relationship that works. Rob. She replied within an hour. 2 words, thank you. I'm sitting on my terrace now. 11 months since I left Boston. March in Tuscany means wildflowers covering the hillsides, new grape leaves unfurling on the vines, warm sun and cool breezes. Elena is coming for dinner later. I'm making Margaret's pot roast recipe, adapted with Italian wine and local herbs. Sophia and I email 3 times a week now. She's thriving at her school. Made the travel lacrosse team. Sent me a video of her scoring a goal. Rebecca and I email every few weeks. Careful messages, both of us walking on eggshells. But there's something there. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But maybe the foundation that could be built on eventually. Jake hasn't reached out. I don't know if he ever will. Part of me hopes he does. Part of me has accepted he might not. Both things can be true. I'm 67 years old. I left my country, sold my home, walked away from a son who tried to take my dignity, and I've never been happy. That's what nobody tells you about aging. They tell you that 67 means winding down, that your best years are behind you, that you should accept whatever your children decide is best for you. They don't tell you that you can choose differently, that walking away from people who hurt you isn't selfish, it's survival. That starting over at 67 isn't just possible, it's sometimes necessary. My son asked why I was living in a museum. He said I needed to move into managed care, threatened to have me declared incompetent. He was wrong about all of it. I wasn't living in a museum. I was living in a mausoleum of a relationship that had died years before I realized it. I don't need managed care. I need people who see me as a human being with value beyond my bank account. And my competence is demonstrated every single day by the life I've built here. Learning a language at 67, forming new friendships, writing things that help people, building a relationship with a woman who sees me clearly, maintaining a connection with my granddaughter across an ocean, standing in a vineyard at sunrise and knowing I'm exactly where I belong. I have value. I always did. I just had to stop letting other people erase it. If you're listening to this, and you're in a similar situation, family treating you like a burden, children viewing you as an ATM instead of a person, people telling you that your worth ended when your usefulness to them did, I want you to know something. You can leave. You can choose yourself. You can build something new even when everyone says you're too old, too set in your ways, too late to start over. It won't be easy. It'll hurt in ways you don't expect. You'll grieve relationships you thought were permanent. You'll doubt yourself at 3 a.m. in a place where you don't speak the language. But you'll also discover something remarkable. You'll discover that you were never useless or burdensome or past your value. You were just surrounded by people who made you feel that way. Remove those people, and your worth becomes obvious again, not just to others, but to yourself. The church bell is ringing 5 o'clock. Elena will be here in an hour. Tomorrow, I'm helping Paolo with spring pruning in the vineyard. Next week, Sophia turns 12, and I'm having a leather journal shipped to Boston, the kind I know she'll love for writing. Rebecca sent me a photo of the apartment, asked if I thought the living room needed new curtains. I told her it looked fine as it is. Baby steps. Life goes on, different than I planned, better in some ways, harder in others. But mine, completely, utterly mine. Giovanni is walking up the path with tomatoes from his greenhouse. The sun is warm on my face. Somewhere in Boston, it's probably snowing. Here, spring is arriving, slow and golden and full of possibility. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I have value. Every single day, I have value. This is how you win, not by fighting the people who tried to take from you, not by revenge or bitterness or holding grudges until you die. You win by building a life so good that their absence from it stops mattering. You win by discovering that the person you thought you'd lost when they threatened you was actually yourself, and that person was worth saving, even if it meant losing everything else to do it. The pot roast smells like home. Elena is laughing as she walks up the path. Tomorrow the sun will rise over these hills like it has for thousands of years, and I'll be here to see it, free,